Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA+ community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzel.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie Zanzel. Welcome back to another episode of Coming Out and Beyond. I am very excited to have CiCi Reagan here today. CiCi is a published author and copywriter who found her calling in message strategy and alignment for all types of businesses, from entrepreneurs to billion-dollar corporations. She's also an international advocate for addiction and domestic abuse survivors who's been featured in Newsweek and Metro, as well as several award-winning podcasts. CiCi uses her vast life experience, cultivated writing talent, and an innate intuition for people to channel her clients' words into mind-blowing marketing copy. She also teaches and coaches those who want to learn the mechanics of messaging in a simple, straightforward way. Her goal is to help others find clarity in their messages so they can do what they love and find fun and freedom in business. CiCi, welcome to the show.
Whoa, what a mouthful.
It's so funny. Your bio is actually nice and concise and really great. I have had to read bios later, like 4 paragraphs long, because people have so many things they've done, and it's like it was a wonderful bio to read.
Thank you.
So tell me your coming out story.
Well, yeah, this is what's interesting because I feel like I don't have one. It's all for me been like the most nebulous of things. I think like figuring out my sexual orientation as well as figuring out like my gender presentation, and all of that is like I feel still in the middle of it. I feel it's very ongoing. I have the type of story that like I fell in love with all my female best friends in high school, you know what I mean? Right. Like that person. And that never really worked out, you know what I mean? I would get drunk and tell them, and then the next day would pretend like it didn't happen. Embarrassed. But I grew up in like religion as well, and like Christianity, and I grew up in like Virginia and Carolina, like very much the Bible Belt, very much Baptist, you know, old school. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't, obviously I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush, but this is what it was like for me.
I focused a lot about that on this show, and it sounds like honestly that you're still on the journey.
Yeah.
And you are, typically when people, tell me those stories of like telling their friends they've fallen in love with them or have a lot of crushes on other girls when they're in high school, it's like you're still figuring it out. And one of the most wonderful things that I promote today is that you can figure this out at whatever time of life. It doesn't have to be when you're a teenager. And I find particularly with people that identify as female, or non-binary, oftentimes that can be in their 30s or 40s, and there's a lot of cultural reasons why we don't figure out our sexual orientation until we're older. And if you grew up in Southern Baptist culture and you grew up in purity culture, you have to fight your way out of all of that before we can even consider our sexuality.
Yeah, because I didn't even feel like I was like a fully formed person. You know, I just felt like I was just like a vessel for other people's desires. Like it never occurred to me that I was supposed to like be having a good time.
No. And also too, I mean, as a woman in Southern Baptist culture, everything is your responsibility, including men's desires and men's sexual desires. And it is such a system that it really makes women, and then it goes beyond so much past sex. It's like you're responsible for men's emotional well-being. You're responsible, if you have children, your children's well-being. You're responsible for so many other people's well-being. And what happens we forget about ourselves, right?
Mm. Yeah. And then when you hit your 30s, you're like, oh, I
Oh,
think I might be a fully formed human being with my own needs and desires.
yeah, true. So, you said that in your bio that you have done a lot of work with domestic abuse survivors and as well as addiction.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about those stories and how you ended up doing this work? Because oftentimes, you know, we become passionate about something that we have survived.
Yeah.
And so I would love to hear about your own story in regards to that.
Thank you. Well, I am so I'm over 8 years sober at the moment.
Congratulations.
Thank you. One day at a
Mhm.
time and all that. But I started drinking when I was like 14 and I spent like about a decade in active addiction.
Mhm.
Uh Nightmare. So, but I started like when my mom was sick. So she got diagnosed with a terminal illness, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease in the States. It's known as motor neuron disease over here in the UK where I live. Um, and there's like a bunch of other stuff that happened. My dad was an alcoholic. It's like very much a genetic component sometimes for people. um I would just wanted to escape. I just everything was terrible and life was pain, and I was 14 and life is terrible when you're 14 anyways. So I just continued drinking, and I'd finally quit, was able to get any sort of sober time when I was like 24, but it took a really long time. And in the midst of all of that, when I was 16, I met this guy who was like 24, 25. And we started a relationship. He was actually like a registered sex offender, like on the registry and everything like that. But because of my past and what I had been through, because of like with my dad and everything, because of my mom's illness, because of the drinking, I was just like perfect. You know what I mean? I was just the perfect. And I feel like these people sort of have a sense about that
Well,
kind of stuff.
yeah, I mean, you were in turmoil
Yeah.
and also in grief. And
Mm.
and so yeah, he's a
Yeah,
groomer.
very easy.
Yeah, you were an easy pick.
Easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So which I understand that now, like, it's not like all good, but it's like I feel like a lot of people hold a lot of shame about this stuff, and I'm like, not my fault.
No, it isn't your fault. I mean, people that are registered, are sex offenders often groom their victims and
Mhm.
they know exactly what they're looking for, whether it is conscious or unconscious. I mean, for some of them, I'm sure it is very conscious and it's very evil. And
Yeah,
for some of them, it's sort of an unconscious life pattern.
I
And
agree.
so you met this guy and you were 16, you were a baby.
Yeah.
Had your mother passed yet?
She
Or
passed when I was 19.
okay, all right.
So I moved out and in with him when I was 17. I just couldn't be in the house anymore, but I really went out of the frying pan into the fire. Um, and yeah, I was in that relationship for a really long time. It ended very badly.
Okay.
um, with like me having to escape the house at night, like after an altercation. I don't know, like I don't want to be super graphic because I don't ever want to like trigger anybody. I don't know how important like that is, but it was a very scary situation. I was already trying kind of planning on leaving,
Mhm.
and I just ended up, taking my little go bag and getting in my car, and that was it. So I had to like
So
find a place
you
to
had
live.
your go bag already packed.
Oh yeah, honey.
Had you already been working with like we'll do a trigger warning for this episode.
Yeah.
Had you already been doing a like working with a domestic abuse shelter at that point?
The thing is, no, because I knew that something was wrong. But this is the thing is like when you're in it, sometimes you just can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have much of a frame of reference for what that might be exactly. um, Especially we had I had moved in with him when I was 17. We had worked together for a long time, but then I ended up what kind of started to open my eyes was I got a job somewhere else, and then I got promoted, and I was doing well, and I was working with adults who had relationships, and they didn't have to ask permission, and they didn't have to, they could wear whatever they wanted. And I was like, oh, this is
Oh,
like the bare minimum.
oh yeah, because I guess, I mean, first of all, you were 16, your family was in crisis when
Mm,
you left that home. You had no frame of reference.
no,
None
but I wouldn't have
whatsoever.
called it abuse. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't have reached out to anyone for help. Like I was just trying to find like apartments that I could afford. And I had Googled like what to do. And I had my go bag with like, my baby book that my mom had made and all this stuff. But she had already, she had passed by this point because I was 24 now. So like, or 23, I guess, when I left him. So um yeah, but then I was able to get sober after that
Hmm. Hmm.
because I wasn't able to get sober with him.
And how did you approach your sobriety? What was the turning point? So, are you in the process of coming out later in life? Are you feeling isolated or lost, cut off from friends and family, or just trying to figure out what is the next step for you? Well, I have a wonderful coaching program called Lotus Group Coaching. It is for people who are female identifying, cis or trans, or non binary folks comfortable in those spaces. And we provide emotional, spiritual, and intellectual support for people who are in the process of coming out later in life. We discuss many things in our community, but what's most important is that you have a community of others who understand. Each one of the coaches in the program have come out later in life, and everybody who is a member of our program is somewhere in the process. So if you are seeking community and you want a soft place to land, go to my website, amoryzanzel.com, and book a connection call. We would love to talk to you.
Well, I tried it. I use a 12-step program,
Mhm.
but I was back and forth for like 8 months to a year. I would like it's very strange because I remember thinking that like I wasn't drinking, but
Mhm.
like I definitely was like every single week.
Mhm.
And then and I would like at one time I got 90 days sober. And
Mhm.
then I texted my friend that and we went and got drunk to celebrate. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. Finally, I was able to, the thing that finally was like, oh, cease. Well,
Mhm.
come on. I had moved down to Carolina. I was staying with my grandparents because I was gonna move here to England. And I had been basically had crashed a New Year's Eve party I wasn't invited to.
Mhm.
And I woke up like at somebody's house and didn't really know like where I was. And it was like a family member's house. Like my friends had like taken me there and taken care of me. But and that had happened like loads of times. I'd woken up loads of times and didn't know where I was or didn't remember. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a new thing. And as a matter of fact, I was perfectly safe, but I just felt like really panicked. I had to go like in the morning and grab my purse from the lady, and like she just kind of like gave it to me and like slammed the door in my face. And so I must have done something, but I don't even know what I've done. And just sitting on the front porch like smoking a Marlboro light, like,
Mhm.
is this it? Like this like just shame cycle, and not like what, like this is it, this is what your life is now. um and I was like, no, I don't think it is. And
Mhm.
then I knew I was coming here to England. And so
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know. I just felt like it was sort of my shot. I was like, you can get out of this small, like one horse town. You can finally go somewhere like big and travel. And if you can't make this work, this your big opportunity, then you don't even deserve it.
Mhm.
And then I never drank again so far.
Mhm. Mhm. So why England?
Oh, well, that's a whole other thing because of because of my ex-husband.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that you said about grooming earlier was almost like a little bit of foreshadowing for people because we met on MySpace when I was 14. He's
Mhm.
20 years older than me.
Mhm.
And he was kind of a family friend. So my mom worked for a musician. He ran like a fan side and did some interviews and stuff like that for this musician. So they sort of knew each other. My mom had sent him like letters and things like that. Um, and I believe had even met him before one time, maybe. So it felt like a sort of safe person.
Mhm.
Anyways, I was in my other relationship for a really long time, left him when I was like 23. And then me and my ex husband started to get more like serious, like romantic, rather than like just being friends, like we had kind of been before.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember when I was like younger, like a teenager, having a crush on him because he was like an older British guy on the internet. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It was like interesting.
Mhm.
But it wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
Right. Right.
So, um, you know, again, I was just sort of like in the perfect sort of position, and he was like going to rescue me and move me to England, and it was also whatever. But again, like, wasn't what I thought, and we were married for a couple of years. I like moved over here and everything like that, and then in really in lockdown,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
became the
Apparent.
thing is with my first ex when I was younger, it was very like overt,
Mhm.
um like the abuse and things. But with my ex-husband, it was much more insidious. It was much more like mind games, that kind of stuff. And so it was harder for me to recognize.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was like it took me a long time, and I was surprised actually. Like I said, in lockdown I sort of realized what was happening, and I was like, I don't know, I was just kind of shocked to have found myself in that position where I was like, oh, I don't have like anything of like for myself, and I can't go and do, and I can't, you know what I mean? It's just like it's just this is a gilded cage, and not even.
Right. Right. Well,
But then I reached out for help.
well, honestly, it makes perfect sense that you ended up with somebody else like that again. We
Mhm.
often partner with people that remind us of our primary caregivers in a
Mhm.
sense, and we do it again and again. And also, too, it doesn't matter if we switch genders, if we go from male to female, we often partner with people that have very similar personalities. It's just
Mhm.
every human being does it. The difference is that when you meet somebody who's also able to work on their stuff and admits that they have a problem and they need to do some work on their things. And so, it doesn't surprise me that you met
No.
somebody, yeah, who like that again. And what I love about it is your honesty about it. So you realized as a woman that you had been in two relationships now where you were limited in
Mm.
how, in your choices because of working with that, with being with them and, not having certain, skills and qualities. So what you realize, you hit this bottom where like I've got to be able to support myself and to be able to um, be able to make choices in my life and not have them
Mhm.
by a man.
Yes.
So how did you go about rebuilding so that, I mean, here you are, you're still a baby. I mean, you're
Yeah.
under 30, right? And you've already lived 10 lifetimes.
Well, I'm
Um,
32, but I'll take
yeah,
it.
yeah, but you were 30 when you left him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were 30 or under. And so you've already lived 10 lifetimes with these guys. And so how did you rebuild?
Um, well, it was a really strange kind of how it went down because obviously I had to get help and I had to find housing. And so all of this stuff was sort of happening behind the scenes. And I was like playing the role and then taking my dog for a walk and like making phone calls like when I could to try to
Mhm,
arrange things. It was
mhm,
very that. Um, so then when I did finally get out into my little one bed flat, which I really love, my little place by the sea, me and my dog. The next day was probably the worst, maybe the worst day of my life, which is saying a lot for me. Um, I just, I don't know. I just felt like I didn't know what I was going to do. I had built a foundation as far as my business and stuff. I had a financial services business that I've sold, and obviously doing the copywriting and the messaging and stuff now, but I hadn't started doing that yet. It was just the financial services stuff. It was a little bit like getting a little bit old. It was like wills and that. So it was very emotive. And I just felt like so burned out with everything. But now I didn't have anybody else.
Mhm.
And obviously, my family is not here. They're all back home in the States. So it was me. I have some amazing friends, some like amazing recovery friends that
Mhm.
really took me in. But obviously, they have their own families and things like that. So, and financially, it was just me.
Mhm.
So honestly, I just really dove into like my spiritual practices and things in a way that I kind of hadn't before. I had been with the, religious stuff, had been kind of like burned by all of that and run really, really far away from it. But in recovery, I started to find that connection again to higher power or whatever. Um, Practicing like gratitude for what I did have. And I would listen to songs that were motivating, like in the morning and do a little dance and stuff. I mean, it was a slog. Like I did not want to do, I did not want to do it, but I wanted to feel better.
Right.
I didn't want to feel like that anymore. I was like, I have spent like my whole life in pain.
Mhm.
Like I can't remember any time where I wasn't like being dragged down by some sort of like lead balloon from like all these abusers throughout my life and the loss of my mom and everything like that. I was like, I just want to be happy. So I
Mhm.
suppose I will act as though I am.
Well, there's a saying in AA, fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
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 So you
It was
start,
kind of that.
yeah, yeah. Do you find yourself happy now?
Yeah. I just took the time to figure out like what I actually wanted and what I actually liked. Living alone really gave me the space to explore myself, to stop like masking as a neurodivergent, to realized that I was non-binary.
Mm.
I'd like interspersed throughout my life, had also like dated men, dated women, like, but it allowed me to explore like just my own self. You know what I mean? What did I like and want and expect, and like what was my idea of success and all of that stuff. And it all came together. But I feel like I just needed to be alone. Like I just needed to be alone for some time,
Mhm.
not like necessarily not dating or not going out with friends. I'd been miserable for a while. Like I wasn't, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm gonna have fun and see people and like, but that was sort of the point, was like choosing to do that, not in a way that was like burying the past or trying to run away from something, but rather trying to run towards myself, like embrace myself and kind of just allowing myself the space to go out there and explore in a way that I had never been able to.
Well, I can imagine because it sounds like you didn't have a breath until you were about 30.
No. And even then, it felt a little bit kind of, because then it was just like financially dire.
Yeah. Well, but also too, like, as somebody who, had to restart my life in my 50s, nothing like having to be responsible for yourself financially to make you be responsible for yourself
You're
financially.
not wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you have to do it. It's
Mhm.
it's part of the, it's, you know, I think a lot of us as women, especially women that come from conservative cultures, and it doesn't really matter if it's religious conservative or not, even progressive cultures, there is this sort of message that we get that, men are supposed to take care of us and that they're going to rescue us. You
Mhm.
even said it, like you started to date the guy from England and you're like, oh, he's going to, change my life if I move there and everything like that. But
Mhm.
what we realize, I think, and you've said it too in this podcast, is that you sort of have to see yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to
Yeah.
take a really hard look at yourself and decide what you want to do and who you want to be.
Mm. But I knew I had done it before. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I knew I was like, well, okay, I've already left one abusive relationship. I can just do it on another continent. That's fine. It was like I
Yeah.
got sober. Like that's the hardest thing I'll ever do. I lost my mom when I was a teenager. Like you think this is like no. Like it wasn't even an option. It was just like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna restart my life. And then it was like, okay, this is what restarting your life looks like. You have no furniture.
So, in this restarting of your life, had you
Mm.
already been copywriting and doing that type of work before
Well,
you
just
left your the second guy?
well, kind of, but not really. Like I had done it for fun. Here's the thing is like I've always written, like always written poetry. Like when I was a teenager, I mean, I've got journals going back to when I was like 10, 11 years old. Like always written. Um, I just like it. My dad was a writer as well. So I guess that kind of like stands to reason. I don't know.
Mhm.
But and obviously owning my own business and everything like that, when you own your own business, as you well know, in the beginning you do everything, so you're your own marketing department and everything. So I was doing all the social media stuff, learned quite a lot, and I would write bits and pieces for friends and things. They'd be like, can you write my bio for this thing? I'm speaking at this thing. And I was like, oh, sure. I love writing bios. I mean, I used to do that for my friends on MySpace. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it was always peppered in through my life. And then I keep bringing up MySpace, like really aging myself.
I can, I'm so surprised because you seem too young to have known about MySpace. So usually the people that were on MySpace were you, I think it was like maybe 10 years before you. So it was very interesting that yet that you keep bringing up MySpace.
I don't know what this like. No affiliation. I was an early adopter, maybe. Probably shouldn't have been on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just going to say the dangers of social media, and if anybody's listening to this that have teenagers, maybe you shouldn't keep them away, especially if life is in a crisis situation for you right now.
Yeah, or just like get their password. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Just like watch what they're doing or
yeah.
something. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah. But then, so obviously, I was getting burnt out with the financial services stuff, like I said before. So I just talked to a friend and I just had this idea. I always got compliments on my social media posts and things, like I said, with it. So I was like, whatever, I just do a post, just did like the one little, like the post on Facebook that makes like the colored background. And I was like, I'm thinking about starting to do copywriting. Like, anybody want to hire me to do like some of their social media marketing? And by the end of the week I had my first 4 recurring clients.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's just continued to grow from there. I am incredibly grateful.
Well, it
So
sounds like,
blessed.
well, it also sounds like that the universe was with you. You were like,
Mm-hmm.
I find that when you are headed in the right direction, then the universe sort of opens up for you. And
Mm-hmm.
that, first of all, as somebody who's, done social media, done all these things, having 4 clients with a little tiny post like that does not happen.
No.
It's, and you will
No.
agree with me. Yeah. That was just like, I think the universe was taking care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And and you were going in the right direction. You were going where you were supposed to go.
Yeah, and I did believe that the whole time. That's the thing. Like I had dove back into my spiritual stuff. I was like pulling my like tarot cards and stuff, and they would say like, it's crap right now, but just wait.
Yeah.
Like, it's really tough right now. It's coming. Look for opportunities. And I was like, what are you doing? But every single day I would say, like, it's getting better. Like, this week is better than last week. Today is better than yesterday, even if it doesn't feel like it is. I was just like, it's getting better. I'm headed in the right direction. I just believed it with all my heart and soul, like, until it was true.
Hmm. Hmm. So what I'm hearing is mindset.
Yeah.
You basically had a mindset, this is going to work.
Yeah.
And
Well, it was like there's no other option.
right, right.
Yeah.
And what I love is that you like, it's funny because I've been doing I meditate every single morning. And so this morning I was doing, this manifest. It's very. I don't want to get into the details, but it'll take me 10 minutes to tell you. It's about manifesting by manifesting what you desire,
Yeah.
and it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah, I think so. Like I think I don't know if you're into all this, but it was also like my Saturn return.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. I
So
actually know about that because I have a client that is very into astrology. And because of her, I have learned a lot about it. If you had said to
yes.
me 2 years ago about it, I wouldn't know what you were talking about.
Well, it's
Saturn
interesting.
returns every 7 years, right? Does that
Yeah,
happen?
well, yeah, but it's sort of like I don't well, see, I don't know. I'm not super into astrology. I just have friends who are, right? So I know enough to
Yeah,
be
they're
dangerous.
really helpful, those friends, aren't they?
Yeah, I know. But they're like something about like every 30 years, or I think it was like my first 30 years, basically looked at my chart between my astrology and my human design, and it was like your first 30 years are going to be awful. And I was like, cool, did that. And then it was like, your next 20 are going to be really good, sort of like learning the lessons and putting the stuff in place. And then from 50 on is like when you're really just recognized as the badass you are. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna put in another 20 years of graft and like watch me when I just feel excited. I just
Mhm,
feel excited now. So
mhm.
it was, yeah, but I I guess I did manifest it if you believe in manifesting, or maybe I just put myself on the right path and found alignment with like what I really wanted to do. Maybe it was like all the therapy and the healing, all the generational trauma. Maybe that was all of it, but I just kind of applied the skills that I learned in recovery. I was like, well, damn, if this could get me sober, then it can probably get me out of these dire straits.
I love that. Um, I have some very good friends that are in recovery, and I used to do Al-Anon. And one of my friends said to me once, if you can become sober when you are young, watch out. Because the values, the things that are taught, whether you do, AA or any other recovery method, it is, you can apply it to every area of your life. And
Yeah.
that's what you did. And so, and you also got sober young. You were only 25, that 24,
Yeah.
that's young to get sober. Most people mess
Mm.
around with addiction for another 10, 15, 20 years. You were young when you got sober.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's honestly part of what kept me drinking for so long, though, is because I was young. Cause like I'd go into the meetings and stuff, especially when I was like staying with my grandparents, because it was like the middle of nowhere, Carolina. And you're talking, you go into a room and it's like 15 people and they're all men and they're
Right.
all over 60. And then me.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable.
Well, yes, it is very uncomfortable. And also, too, part of recovery is falling off the wagon. I mean,
Oh,
people,
sure.
yeah, what you described as your early days of recovery is so typical.
Mm-hmm.
People, until something happens where you decide, okay, I can't do this anymore. So it
Yeah.
really sounds like you had a very typical journey, but you also didn't have good mentors within the recovery community at that point because they were all 60-year-old men and you were a 25-year-old girl. I mean, there probably would have been a nice old guy that could have helped you, but
Yeah.
it was just like no. I have often heard that, especially people who live in rural communities, the people that are in the recovery meetings, they just don't have much in common with them. And they are often men. And
Yeah.
when you're a young woman, like you really want to have other people that are your age being able to talk about those things and a bunch, they have a lot of wisdom, some of those guys, but it just like I don't feel like I'm in my community right now.
No, I was like, where's the girls? Where's
There's
the
the
gays?
girls. Yeah.
There were a few women, they were older. We would do some stuff together. Like I was just like shoehorning friendships. It's not necessarily that like I didn't like them or anything like that, but it was just like, oh, there's four women that
Mm-hmm.
come to this meeting sometimes that live in a 30-mile radius. So here's my number. Text me if you want to
Please
ride,
call
you
me.
know?
Please call me.
Yeah. Like it was very that. And they helped me a lot. And one of the ladies like took me through my first like 3 steps so I could do my steps. And then I moved over here and then I finished the rest. But you're right. Those like skills, I mean, putting your whole life and everything you've ever done into a spreadsheet, like
Mm-hmm.
everything you've ever done wrong and everything everybody's ever done wrong to you, and then how it's affected you, like into a spreadsheet and writing it down and looking at it in black and white was yeah, that was horrendous. But I'm really glad that I did it, you know, because that's what allowed me to take responsibility for what was mine and to let go of what wasn't mine, to stop like blaming myself for getting into these relationships and to be like, well, of course you did. Like it would
Oh,
have
like
been
when you
crazy
told
if
me,
you
I'm like,
hadn't.
well, like when you told me the story, I'm like, of course you did. Like,
Yeah.
like, of course you did.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to, in my groups, I practice radical self-compassion, and that's what it seems like you have learned over the years is to like let go of things that you have control of, don't have any control over, and just
Yeah.
beat yourself up for choices when you had no other choice or just no other idea about the world.
Yeah. And nobody else has had to live with the consequences of those
Right.
decisions as much as I have. Like I have paid my dues, I've paid the price. I mean, I still have like family that doesn't talk to me,
Hmm.
but that's okay. Like that's about them and not about me. And there's like, I can't do anything about it. Like, does it hurt my heart? Yeah. Do I beat myself up about it and feel guilty? No.
No. Well, you things can hurt your heart, but you don't have to carry that pain.
Yeah, it's not about me really. Like this, you know, I messed up and like, yeah, definitely did. Like I apologize to the people who would hear my apology. I left the people alone who I thought if I approached them it would only make things worse. And I just don't treat people like that anymore. I don't act the way that I did when I was in active addiction. Thank God. That's why I have like such a nice life now. So many nice people because people actually want to hang out with me now. But that's all I can do.
Hmm. Hmm. So you've been through a lot. And I asked 3 questions at the end of this podcast. I really loved your story, CC. I really appreciate
Thanks.
that because I know that there's a ton of women out there that have very similar stories.
Mm.
And just the way you sort of overcome it. And I think both of us understand that, yeah, it's scary as hell to try to like figure out a new life after even after being with somebody for a long time, but you can do it.
Yes.
You can do it. And I think
Mhm.
both of us are examples of that. And so I really appreciate your story. And I also appreciate that you created a new life for yourself. So I asked 3 questions at the end of this podcast. Um, what is your coming out song since you really never came out?
Okay. It's I believe in a thing called love by the darkness
Hmm.
because you know that song, I believe in a thing called love.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
one. I love that. That's a great dance. Was that one of your dancing songs when you were
100%.
dancing? Yeah, I bet that's a really fun song to dance to.
I also think if I was a wrestler, that would be my walkout song. So
That
no one can take it.
would be a great one. A book or movie, something that really changed your perspective on life.
Oh, okay. The book called The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer,
Hmm.
life changing. She was like, she is they've come back together, the Dresden Dolls, my favorite band, like indie band. She's like, she's an artist and she's fully self-supporting through Patreon. It's people like me and her fans who support her. And she started out as a living statue, the 8 Foot Bride in Boston.
Hmm.
And the whole book is about asking for what you need, and people will give it to you, and there's no shame in asking and this sort of thing, because I think a lot of times we don't ask for what we want. A lot of people get in their own way. I see it a lot, like especially with what I do in business now with the messaging and stuff. People get in their own way, but it happens in life and in business, and that was just a huge shift for me. The audiobook is incredible as well. She plays the ukulele.
Ah, okay. I'm gonna go. I've learned about so many books from my guests. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get that one. And how would you describe your life today, CC?
It's a life beyond my wildest dreams. It's what they say. When I started the 12 steps, if anybody is familiar with the promises,
Mm-hmm.
it's like we will stop like self-serving behavior, like self-sabotage will slip away. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. We will understand that our higher power is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Like this whole thing of like all these promises. I have chills now because when I first read it, like and heard it read out loud, like in those first early days, like I could cry because that is like the promises. I was like, well, you're promising. I'm gonna believe you. Like I'm gonna believe the promises. And I just clung so hard to it. And through all like the difficulties and stuff, I just remembered like the promises. And now that's what I feel like. I do feel like, it's not that life is easy. It stopped being difficult. It's like that I either know how to handle stuff now, have the tools, or the ability to ask somebody who's better equipped than me, and the gumption to do so.
I love that. And I really love those four ways. And they're four really wonderful pieces of advice. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for being on the show today, CC. Good luck in your journey. And I can't wait to see where you are when you're 50.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzel. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzel.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzel.com.